All right, welcome back, all you Chem 1 kids. We are starting a new unit on gases and the kinetic theory of their behavior. And so we will start off, hopefully, with some prior knowledge about what is a gas. And gases are molecules that move. Ooh, I'm going to change the size of that. Gases are molecules that move freely. They are also molecules that have a large amount of kinetic energy. If you remember back at the beginning of the year, when we drew our little particulate drawings and we drew gases, we kind of drew them with pictures, and we had large arrows coming off of them showing that they were moving around pretty fast because they have a lot of kinetic energy. They take the shape of the container they are in. They fill up the volume of the container or the entire shape of the container. They have lots of empty space between the molecules. And because there's lots of empty space, they're easily compressible or easily compressed. So that means you can squish them into a smaller space. So what does it mean when we talk about the kinetic theory? Or sometimes it's called the kinetic molecular theory. So sometimes if you're looking at the internet, maybe for extra help, you'll hear or you'll see it referred to as KMT for kinetic molecular theory. And the kinetic theory states that all particles are in constant motion. And that particles in a gas are usually molecules or atoms. So those are the representative particles that you're going to be dealing with. Remember, we also have formula units, but those are reserved for our ionic compounds. And ionic compounds are salts, like anything like sodium chloride or potassium iodide. And those are solids at room temperature. So we're not going to be looking at those in this unit because this unit is on gases. All right, as temperature increases, think about what's happening. As temperature increases in a gas, the motion's going to increase. And back to middle school or even sometimes elementary school, you can get the concept that the motion increases. That's kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion. And that, you're going to hear us talk in this unit, is called a direct relationship. You should hear your math teachers refer to that as a direct relationship. When one variable goes up and the other goes up, that's called a direct relationship. All right, so there's also 3 assumptions about gases. An assumption is something that you just kind of take for granted. If somebody assumes something about you, they just take that for granted. And so we do these things, we make these assumptions about gases kind of to make the math go easier and to kind of generalize their behavior. Not everything fits into this stereotype of a gas, but it really helps us. So there's 3 assumptions about gases. First of all, the particles of a gas contain such small particles that we assume their volume to be insignificant. That means we can neglect their volume. That means they don't take up any space. So it means the space in a gas is empty. Also, the movement of gas particles is rapid, random, and constant. They move extremely quickly, they travel in straight lines, and they do not stop. They will change direction after bouncing off of each other or the walls of the container. If they don't hit something else, they'll just keep going in a straight line. They will also fill all the available space in a container. So think of this, if you were to spray a perfume or a cologne in a room, if you could track basically where that perfume or cologne went, you would see that it would just keep going until it would hit something, either a person or a desk or a wall or the ceiling or something. And once it did that, then it would bounce off and then it would keep go in a different direction. Also, gas particles experience what we call elastic collisions. Elastic collisions means that energy is transferred from one particle to another without the loss of energy. That means energy is conserved. That means basically there's no loss to friction. Right now, like if you were to roll a, let's say, tennis ball down the hallway at home, if you're that bored right now during the quarantine, eventually it would start to slow down due to friction between the ball and the floor in your home. That's because it's experiencing inelastic collisions between it and the surface of your floor. Elastic collisions means there's no loss of energy due to friction. All right, so the next section of your notes we've decided to kind of get rid of and skip. We're not going to go over the difference between ideal and real gases, so we're going to skip that section, so you can just kind of cross it out. But we are going to talk about the pictures at the bottom of page 2. Number 1 is just a little picture there, and it states that the particles of the gas are so small that they do not take up a lot of room in the container. So that's just an arrow there. I think you should see it in your notes. That's kind of an easy picture to see. So there's a lot of empty space in here. That's why gases are easily compressed. You can squish them closer together. The second picture is that the gases travel in straight lines in between collisions, meaning until they collide, they will just keep moving in the same direction. Also, gases fill the entire space that they are in. And the word that you will hear about that is called diffusion. They will keep filling the space that they are in. So when, like I said, when you spray perfume in a room, the gas will diffuse throughout the room. So the last concept we're going to talk about is what's called pressure. Pressure is a variable that we will be dealing with specifically for gases. Why? Because liquids and solids do not exert gas or pressure on their container, only gases. And it's the result of rapidly moving particles that are in a gas when they collide with the walls of the container. Pressure is based on the number of collisions. In a vacuum, which means there's empty space with no particles and no pressure. A lot of kids don't understand when you talk about in a vacuum. So in a vacuum, that means it's empty space. So you're going to have no pressure exerted. The SI, if you forgot what SI, it's a revised metric system. SI stands for System International. Makes me sound all fancy. International. It's the revised metric system. The unit for pressure is called the Pascal. And it's, even though it's the SI unit of pressure in chemistry, we really don't use the Pascal. We use a variation of the Pascal, the kilopascal, and you can see that right here, kPa. We have lots of pressure units, so you have to get used to those really fast, really quickly. And so hopefully we're going to get to that here, and then you're going to review those again on Friday. So here we go. One that you're going to hear a lot is called the atmosphere. Oh, and by the way, so it says here conversions. Yep, they're back already. So you have 1 atmosphere is equal to 101.3 kPa, kilopascals, which is also equal to 760 millimeters of mercury, which was also named a torr. So you need to kind of get the idea that 1 millimeter of mercury is equal to 1 torr. They renamed the millimeter of mercury after an Italian physicist, Torricelli, or Torricelli, however you want to pronounce it. I think it is Torricelli. So it's an actual person. So most of the time I will write it with a capital T, but sometimes you see it with a lowercase t as well. 14.7 psi. PSI stands for pounds per square inch. And barometric pressure, bars, BAR, 1.0 or 1.013 bars is another unit of pressure. So as you can see, there's a lot of different units of pressure. We will stick pretty much with atmospheres, kPa, millimeters mercury, torr, and occasionally PSI. So there you go, lots of units. We usually measure pressure. A lot of times we try to stay around what's called STP, which stands for standard, that's the S, temperature, that's the T, and pressure, that's the P. And STP is at 0 degrees Celsius and 1 atmosphere, which is any of these things that 1 atmosphere is equal to. And remember, pressure is based on the number of collisions. And so that's really equal to, if you think of your definition from physics, is the force applied over a unit of area. So converting between units of pressure. We're always going to make this a one-step conversion. So if a pressure gauge records pressure to be 450 kPa, so that's our given. What is the pressure? What is this measurement in atmospheres? So our given is 450 kPa. So that means kPa goes on the bottom. Atmospheres goes on the top. We know 1 atmosphere is equivalent to 101.3 kPa. We get out our handy dandy calculator and we take 450, and because the 101.3 is on the bottom, we're going to divide by it, and our answer is going to be 4.44 atmospheres. We're doing the same problem, 450 kPa, but instead going to millimeters of mercury, We're going to go back up to the top. I'm going to change my colors here, and I'm going to go and find the equivalent kilopascals in millimeters of mercury. Neither one of those is 1, so that means I have to put the 101.3 kPa on the bottom, and it's equivalent to 760 millimeters of mercury. So that means I'm going to take the 450 times 760 on the top, and then divided by 101.3 kPa on the bottom, and I get roughly about 3,376. And again, the units, I should have checked that before, that they canceled out, shame on me, make 3,376 millimeters of mercury as my answer to the second one. All right, hopefully this was helpful, and we will revisit this later on in the week. Hope you're all glad to be back. I'm sure you are. Insert sarcasm there. And we'll talk to you later.